All right. Well, welcome everybody to our customer exclusive webinar series, Cyber Jedi Mind Tricks. And you can tell that Reg had a lot of fun putting together this presentation. I think this time is a really important subject. I know that we talk a lot about creating this, culture of security in organizations, and we're going to delve into that a little bit here and really look at 7 tips for improving employee awareness. And with that, we just want to take a moment and talk about new webinars that are be coming out from us that are going to be exclusive to you. The first in January, keeping up with the compliances. We're going to update. We're really going to do an overview across many of the industry and governmental regulations, including for those that are in financial services. You just got an email from us today, and we will start to delve into the New York State DFS regulations. And then in March, our next customer webinar is going to be penetration testing for SMBs. So we hope that you will continue to join us for all of these. Okay. And as I think you all know by now, our CEO of OrbitalFire, Reg Harnish, is going to be the speaker for today. We will get started from there. Now, Reg, I think that what we should do before you get started is I'd like to put out a poll for everybody that's on the call. Good. So if everybody would just take a moment and answer as you're coming in, please do this. We'll put it up for a second. How confident are you in your employee cyber skills? Let us know what you think. And I know people are coming in, but as you come in, I'd love you to take a moment to fill out the poll, and then we'll just get started. And actually, Reg, while I keep this open, I think you can probably get started, and we'll see what the thing is. But it looks like overwhelmingly awareness in cyber, the force is growing.
It's probably a good place to start. Awesome. Well, listen, I as always appreciate your time, and I think particularly with our customers, we're keenly interested and invested in creating a workforce that is much more aware of cyber-related issues, their requirements for reporting, what looks like normal or abnormal behavior. We invest a lot of time in our services that we focus on. Workforce is really right at the top for us. And partially because we love a challenge, but partially because we know that risk often comes down to human beings. In fact, I want to talk a little bit about it. The industry wants you to believe that human beings are the weakest link. I have a slightly different take on that. But first, let's just talk about a few statistics. And as most of you probably already know, I'm not a huge fan of statistics in this industry, but there are things that we generally agree on. One is that losses from cybercrime, whether it's financial fraud, ransomware, theft of a device, breach, compromise, those are increasing. Unfortunately, that's just where we are. We also see that small businesses are being more and more impacted because the economics of cybercrime have changed with automation. And yes, despite the buzzword, artificial intelligence is changing that at this time. And it's just made it easier and more efficient and less expensive to perpetrate crime, globally. And so we see these losses stacking up. It doesn't mean we're not getting better at cybersecurity. I think we are, generally speaking. And small businesses are increasingly adopting cybersecurity best practices and investing in, cybersecurity. But we've got a long way to go. And the reality is that the bad guys are getting better faster than we are. So regardless of what study or report you see, a lot of these contradict each other. But the reality is that we are seeing a growth in losses from cybercrime. We are not keeping up. And a lot of that comes down to some very difficult problems. Of course, the first is this, right? If you look at the Verizon or the IBM, or there's a few other highly regarded reports that do a lot of research. Many of them attribute most cybercrime to human error. And that could be clicking a link or visiting a compromised website or refusing to report or doing something sloppy with their computer. Comes in a lot of different shapes and forms. But the industry is telling you and wants you to believe that human beings are the greatest risk or the weakest link. Now, I agree with that, but not the way the industry wants you to think. So for me, people clicking links or visiting websites or opening an attachment in an email, the industry is telling people to stop clicking links in email, which is just absolutely absurd, because that's why we invented the internet and email, is to send someone a link and shortcut and reference something online and make it easy for people. So for me, that's not the biggest problem, despite the fact that we do see a vast majority of cybercrime being related to human error. For me, human beings are the weakest link in cybersecurity, because everything we do is done by a human being today. So whether that's writing code, configuring a firewall, or clicking a link in an email, all of these areas have problems. We tend to highlight, of course, the end users clicking links, opening attachments, visiting compromised websites as part of this. But I think there's a smarter way. And I think for us, thinking critically about the problem leads to better solutions. And that's really what we want to talk about today. But there's another dirty secret that no one really wants to talk about or admit. In our experience, and certainly our customers, I believe, are exemplary of this. Most end users have the skills to identify a phishing email or a scam or an infected website or something fishy going on their computer. Most people that we work with do have these skills, but what they refuse to do is take the 2 seconds it requires to apply those skills. So a big part of our mission and our challenge in awareness is not necessarily skills assessment and teaching people what a good password looks like, or not to circumvent their antivirus scan that is running and slowing their computer down. That, of course, is important. We recognize that there's a certain amount of skills, but what we need to do as leaders and as tutors and as service providers is to learn how to, first of all, incent people and motivate them to apply those skills, but then secondarily, create a system in which there is understanding, there is correlation, meaning I understand how I contribute to the greater good, where there is simplicity, making it easy for our end users to comply with the things that we're asking them to do, whether it's training, a quiz, reporting an incident. That needs to be easier for them. That's our job. But it really comes down to incentive, motivation, and attitudes. And ultimately, all of those are parts of culture. And we talk about culture a lot because when we see organizations that are at 100% compliance every single month on training, and we have customers like that, actually quite a few customers, and not small customers. These are folks with more than 100 employees, where every single month, for months on end, everyone takes their training and they are failing phishing testing very rarely. And that's partially because the company has developed a culture where expectations are understood, and cybersecurity awareness is really integrated into everything that they do. It starts at onboarding, day one, setting expectations. It goes through, leadership being subject to the same kinds of training and testing that every other employee is, and sort of walking the walk, but really just making it important. And that's different for every company, every customer of ours. Every company has a different culture. But for us, there is a bit of a formula and some best practices that we leverage consistently to help build that culture. Let's talk about those. Start with the first thing. When we begin the conversation, most customers or prospects, anyone that we're talking to, have this idea in their head that they need to get to 100% compliance and 0% susceptibility. And that's not really a healthy goal. Now, it doesn't mean that we won't shoot for that, but I think we have established a sense of human susceptibility in a way that we know that 100% compliance and 0% susceptibility is not really realistic. After all, we are human beings. We do make mistakes. And in some ways, creating an expectation that mistakes are not allowed can be problematic culturally as well. And so for us, establishing the right goals is about understanding your business. What is the mission? What does your risk tolerance look like? What might your regulatory requirements and oversight insist of you? Best practices. So there's a whole bunch of ingredients that go into setting the right goal. You've probably noticed that in your monthly dashboards, your cyber blast reports, that one, we identify the goals because we want those to be clear, but you may have been surprised in the past that our goals were so low, quote unquote. So for example, 85% compliance, whether it's PCI, New York State DFS, HIPAA, doesn't really matter. 85% for us is what we call a defensible position to be in. We need to think about awareness goals in the same way. One is truly what's achievable, and 100% generally is not. I would say that our customers who are constantly at the 100% mark, they've done some special things and they've hired special people, but that's not really the norm. You know, for us, again, an achievable goal creates a sense of opportunity for the folks that are subject to these programs. And so I encourage you to think about your risk tolerance, the kind of personality your business has, your culture. Obviously, you know, the regulatory mandates are important, but start to think about this differently. I think 85 to 95% month over month, that is a very defensible position to be in. And we understand that it only takes one click. We get that. But when we look at risk month over month, or what we call aggregate risk, if we can eliminate 85% of the susceptibility in human beings, we feel like that's a comfortable place. Do we want to be at 100%? Absolutely. But is 85% a good goal? I think it is for many, many, many companies. And that also goes for phishing testing. We know that there are tests out there. They're becoming more sophisticated. It's becoming harder to distinguish between scams and legitimate email. We get that. And so is it fair to expect 100% success? I don't think so. But we recognize that it only takes one click to create disaster. But in terms of the communication and the culture and the awareness program that we're building, we need to leave a little bit of wiggle room, because I believe, you know, human beings are programmed in a way where if they don't feel like the goal is achievable, they're not even going to try. It's not important. It's not realistic. And immediately their brain goes to a different place and creates these exceptions where I don't need to do this because there's no way that I could ever meet those expectations. So creating the right goals, let's start in the right place. Setting expectations is a big, big area. Some of it's timing, some of it's content, some of it's how do we present this? What's the messaging? So let's talk timing first. You should be setting expectations of your workforce on day one, hour one, because that's when a human being is most open to communication, when they are learning. When human beings experience change, it heightens their senses and it heightens their ability to absorb and retain information. So if we on day one are able to say, listen, welcome to the team. We're so happy to have you here. One thing I want you to know is that we take cybersecurity very seriously. we take custody of some very important information, or our risk and our business viability depends on our capability of avoiding cybercrime. So please know that you are going to be expected to meet certain expectations related to cybersecurity. It's not optional. This is something that we expect of every employee. If you can deliver that kind of message on day one, that is something that gets retained. If you're doing it 6 months in and the employee has already sort of been conditioned to, an experience that isn't quite like that, it's going to be much harder. So setting clear expectations, part of it is timing. So start early. The second is do it repeatedly, consistently, continuously. So obviously, our awareness programs are designed to deliver 2 different types of awareness elements monthly. And that's because we know that short continuous drips of training, testing, and skills assessment are much, much more effective than a single annual training that takes an hour. I think we've proven through countless studies that if you're training people once a year with a bunch of PowerPoint slides, you might as well not do it at all because it has zero effect. But training every month, that's a different story, especially if we've set the expectation that you need to comply with this. This is part of your job description. This is how you're going to be evaluated on an annual basis or a regular basis. Setting those expectations are important. Integrating that with timing is important too. So I touched a little bit about messaging. We want to see cybersecurity roles and responsibilities integrated into your position description, and the job rec or opening. We want to see cybersecurity language right there, that if you're good candidates are candidates who understand cybersecurity or understand the value of cybersecurity behaviors. We want to see them in performance evaluations. We want to see them in job descriptions. We want to see them everywhere. We want to see expectations clearly communicated to people early and then continuously. Messaging is also important as well, because your messaging should be very clear that everyone has a cybersecurity responsibility. There's no one exempt from this. And if you have a workforce member who has access to any type of computers, data, or networks at your organization, they should have the same expectations across the board. Now, you can be a little more sophisticated here because you have certain roles that we consider high risk. So if your accountant or someone who has the ability to move money, or HR setting up direct deposit, or an IT administrator who has global administrator credentials or access to every computer, well, our expectations of them are different. And so setting role-based expectations is also important because each role has a risk profile. And so aligning all those, delivering continuous messaging, ensuring that no one is exempt, these types of expectations raise the bar. And, those kinds of behaviors, some of those are absorbed osmotically, like they're going to get it from their peers. If they see their peers taking it seriously, well, inherently, we start to, as human beings, expect that of ourselves. So set clear expectations, define acceptable and unacceptable cybersecurity behaviors, and make that part of your culture. Just drive that out and put that in every area of the business. I can tell you that our customers that hit 100% compliance every month, they have mandated cybersecurity training and testing. They make it very clear that this is not optional. So it kind of enhancing that expectation to say, if you don't take the training, if you don't invest your time, money, and energy that we have given you and that we are investing in on your behalf, there's going to be a problem. Yeah, and not that it's punitive. We don't want awareness programs to feel punitive in any way. Most of the time when people fail to take their training or succeed in their testing, it's another problem. It's usually a process problem or an expectations problem or something else. But mandating training and testing is important. I think around the messaging, you can do this in a way where it doesn't come across as punitive and it doesn't come across as a situation where you can't make mistakes, but rather that the company and your peers expect that you're going to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Do mistakes happen? Are we going to make errors? Absolutely. We've left room for that. But make no mistake, this is required of you, no different than anything else that's on your job description. Talked about the punitive aspects of cyber programs, and unfortunately, the industry doesn't do a great job of this. We often hear that people who repeatedly miss their training or fail the testing, that they're sent to remedial classes, or they're registered for or signed up for additional training. And we don't think that makes a lot of sense. We feel that recognizing champions and handing out gold stars and identifying the winners and people who are consistently overperforming or meeting expectations, and whether that's in a company newsletter or an email, or it's just the supervisor, in a team meeting saying, hey, listen, Jim and Sandy, thank you so much. You guys are crushing your awareness training stuff. And that means a lot to me, because I'm expected to set these expectations myself. And I'm in the same program that all of you are. Excuse me. Those kind of carrots are very seductive for human beings, because as a species, we are driven by these reward elements, right? And so everyone wants a gold star. We like being recognized. We like winning. We like being, identified as someone who is good at something. Those are things that we are programmed as humans to be. The punitive aspects of this can backfire, and we have seen them backfire, where there's sort of a revolt against these mandates or punishments. We don't see that solving problems the way, let's say, a game where you can actually win prizes, or a leaderboard where you're identified in a common area in the business. Who's number one in training and testing this year? Like, who's got the top score? That kind of stuff really, really works. So we encourage you to think about how you can recognize and reward your champions and your winners and your overperformers, and not so much deal with the punitive aspects. Now, if you feel like that is got to be part of the program because culturally you're doing other things the same way, then our recommendation is to recognize and reward individually and punish collectively. So what that means is, if Jim from accounting continuously falls, is susceptible to phishing testing, what we are recommending doing is, as a team, go to the accounting team and say, hey, listen, we're not seeing performance here. What's the problem? How do we address this? Help us fix this for you. But if this performance continues to underperform, we're going to have to look at some other options for you guys. Because if you force everyone on the team to take remedial training, even though one person has failed, trust me, that problem is going to work itself out. And this has been proven through countless studies as well, where one member of the team dragging everyone else down, the team starts to take care of them. And they sort of impose their expectations on people that are failing, and you don't have to do anything. So you avoid the punitive aspects of the awareness program, but still solve the problem in a different way, in a way that's much more effective. Most of you, I don't know who's on the webinar today, but I believe, and I'm confident that most of you have experienced some type of undesirable internet or computer disaster or crisis. And really important, one of the challenges that we have in awareness is what we call correlation. Getting someone or helping someone understand that this is possible, it could happen to them, and that they are part of the problem or they're part of the solution. So, this idea that, oh, it can't happen to me, or I'm invulnerable, I'm really good at recognizing this stuff. We see that from, IT folks very often, and I don't want to demonize IT folks, they're no more susceptible or less susceptible than anyone else, but we see this attitude where, oh, of course, I'm never going to fail a phishing test, or I know all of this stuff. I've been using computers for years. And so there's a gap between an individual's understanding or acceptance of this fact and what's happening in reality. And so when it happens to your business, use it as an opportunity to communicate what happened. And it doesn't mean you need to identify or demonize any particular employee, but rather the messaging should be, hey, listen, not only can this happen, it did happen. And let me tell you how it happened and what impact it's had to the business and how we're going to pay for this, or the reputational issues that it's caused. This is a big deal. Bringing that home makes it a totally different story. Being able to correlate that this can happen to us, and it did happen to us. Oh, and by the way, I was probably one of the people who made it possible. It's really my fault. So telling those stories is important because you can't really manufacture a crisis. And so when these things do come along, and hopefully they're not a frequent event, but make sure you're communicating those to the team. There's so many good learning lessons and teachable moments in these aspects. And I would say not wasting it. Part of that is asking your workforce for the solution. Like when you're describing what happened, let's say someone errantly wired money to the wrong accounts because they were tricked, or visited a compromised website, or maybe someone just refused to report an incident even though they knew something suspicious was going on. Ask your team, like, how do we solve this? Like, what are we not doing? It's make it an involved collective solution. Again, people want to solve problems. Their DNA, their genetics, they want to solve problems. Not only do they want a gold star, but they want to be part of the solution. And so ask them, how did this happen? And how can we avoid this again? I'm looking for help. I don't have all the answers. I need you guys to participate and contribute. And a crisis, some type of incident, is like one of the best places to do this because it's all real. You don't have to manufacture anything, and you get to help solve a problem. People, as you've probably figured out with many of our training modules, we really try to leverage a little bit of humor. Our webinars, everything that we do, what we recognize, and again, going back to psychology and some of the behavioral studies that have been done, is that when people are laughing or people are comfortable, they're much more open to suggestions and recommendation and training and education. And also their brain does a better job of absorbing and retaining that information. So if we can get people laughing at the beginning of a presentation, we know instantly for the next 30 minutes, they're going to be more open to anything that I share with them or any recommendations. So I would encourage you to find a way to have fun with this. And it could be maybe some funny meme posters, or, obviously our training tends to be an engaging, if it's not always funny, and sometimes it is, it's more engaging because it's a little bit lighthearted. We're not just hammering people with expectations and, checklists and things like that. I think if you can have fun with this, then you are more likely to have some success. A couple of other examples. Let's figure out how to create competitions and games so that, again, we're sort of tying in the carrots and some reward and recognition with a little bit of fun. One of the things that we have done over the last year or two with many customers is these ideas of awareness competitions. And so recognizing that October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we back it up 6 months, and each month we're tracking awareness, individual awareness performance, but we also create teams so that no one is singled out. And let's say there are 10 teams in your organization. It doesn't have to be, it can be 2 or 3 people. It doesn't have to be a ton of team members. We have a leaderboard. And so each month we're tracking individual performance, which becomes team performance. which becomes recognition. And that's fun. I mean, people enjoy, again, it's like, March Madness, like, and that's sort of a craze that sweeps the nation and corporate America every, March. And so we can recreate those same incentives and that same engaging, fun aspect to awareness training. Again, going back to not taking it too seriously, setting, appropriate goals, leveraging rewards and recognition over punitive outcomes. This is a great way to tie a lot of those things together. And then, of course, elevate the importance of awareness in your company and your culture. It's like, we have invested so much time, money, and energy in this game for 6 months. We're also going to give away some gift cards or dinner or the good parking spot outside. Whatever it is, I think those are really good ways to incorporate some of these best practices through competitions and games or just leaderboards or whatever that is, and have a little bit of fun with it. Last is, I'll say, an affiliated or related topic, but there are ways to simulate these fire drills, and we call them incident response tabletops. Your ability to respond to an incident is partially driven by your ability to identify and detect those incidents, which is all awareness and your workforce contributing to the greater good and sort of delivering on their expectations. So a cybersecurity incident response tabletop may be done once a year. You spend a couple of hours simulating financial fraud or breach of regulated data or loss or theft of a device. These can really drive home in a live, simulated, but safe and controlled environment in a way that very few things can. If you are actually responding to an incident, as many of you probably already know, it can be very chaotic, emotional, fluid, organic, and confusing. So if we can take that feeling and essentially give you the ability to practice responding to an incident in a live but controlled and safe environment, you still get a lot of the benefit of muscle memory and a sort of a sense of how's it going to feel when we actually get hit by ransomware. We can emulate a lot of that. So to encourage you, whether you're leveraging us or it's something you do yourselves or anything else, is to think about how do we do on a regular basis this fire drill, this tabletopping, so that we can continue to push awareness and expectations. And not only that, but our response capability. How good are we at responding to these different types of likely incidents, pushing those down to your workforce, just as yet one more element of a good awareness program and practice. Important to recognize that there are two parts to cybersecurity. The first is the reality, and the second is how we feel about it. The reason we're challenged in cybersecurity awareness and why we don't see all of our customers at 100% compliance or 0% failures every month is because most human beings make security decisions on their feelings, not the reality. Lots of ways to describe this, but you all know that you can feel secure even when you're not, and you can be secure even when it doesn't feel that way. So we have to recognize that these two pieces don't always overlap. Sometimes they do, but they don't often overlap. And we really need to want to deal with the feelings of cybersecurity and security as much as we're dealing with the reality. Obviously, we're all data-driven organizations, and there's got to be some fact in the basis. But recognize that human beings, through cognitive bias in our experiences and our genetics, we're going to respond to things in security differently than we are if we're building a spreadsheet or we're building a strategic plan or we're selling our products and services. This is a different challenge. And honestly, I would argue because most of the folks who are delivering these awareness programs are not psychologists. It's one of the reasons I think as an industry, we haven't done a great job with awareness. So important to recognize those things. A couple of other final thoughts here. In terms of your program, you may be saying, hey, listen, we've been a customer of OrbitalFire for a while, and have things gotten better? Yeah, for sure, but we're not where we want to be. Coming back to the goals and where we're heading and what the expectations are, I saw a great talk late last year about habits and how you create habits. And the example that this speaker gave was they had to get up early in the morning, they had to get into a cab to go to the gym and then to work out. And so working out was actually like 6 steps in to this. So they found it very difficult to get motivated to go to the gym because there were all of these hurdles in between them and the goal, the actual activity. And so what they were saying was that they made a habitual change in their routine, which is the night before the morning that they had to go to the gym, they put their sneakers next to the bed. And the first thing they did before they turned on a light, before they had coffee, before they brushed their teeth, is they put their sneakers on, because there was nothing between them and the goal. And once they had their sneakers on, they were ready to go. They were like in the mindset that, okay, I'm going to the gym. And yeah, there's a cab ride and probably raining out, and I got to do, all of these different things to get to that point. But once they had their sneakers on, they were there. They were over the finish line. Encourage you to think about how you can do that in your organization as well, whether it's the program and how you're communicating and messaging to your team. And obviously, we would love to help you with that. Or it's your goal setting as a leadership team. Really, let's focus on the first step. We know that there are lots of elements to this, and we know that some of them we're just not very good at, right? Most of us are not psychologists, so we're doing the best that we can. And it can be frustrating. But I think if we start to move the finish line closer to the start, we're much more likely to stick with the program. We're much more likely to succeed. So focus on the sneakers, not the gym. And then the last is, there's almost always a situation where there are people who just refuse to do this. And for whatever reason, we aren't good at motivating them or communicating our expectations or setting goals or delivering the right training and testing. It could be a lot of different things. It's not uncommon to see a person or a percentage of your workforce that is just never going to get it. And in those cases, we want to work with you to help build what we call compensations. If this is an indispensable employee, he's been there for 25 years, this is a lovely human being, and so in every other category is crushing it, but for whatever reason, we're not connecting on the awareness stuff. Let's talk about how to compensate for that, because there's always going to be someone who disagrees with the program or doesn't understand it or can't connect with it. So if it's a low-risk employee, maybe we don't have a lot to worry about. Maybe there are some other technical or procedural controls that we can put in place to limit this individual's impact during a potential incident. If it's a high-risk user, we may have some other harder decisions to make. So if it's your controller who's wiring money on a daily basis that just continuously failing phishing testing, then we have other conversations. But I would say just let's recognize that human beings are not firewalls. That term just gives me the chills when the industry loves the term human firewalls, but they're nothing like firewalls. Firewalls, they don't have bad days. They don't get sick or go on vacation. They don't hate their boss. They do exactly what we tell them to do every single time. And that's nothing like a human being. So humans are not firewalls, and they're not programmed the same way. We have to create incentive for them. We have to create understanding and sort of collective expectations. And there's a whole bunch of other things, most of which are relative to psychology and understanding their emotions and how they react. And, what was their upbringing and how are they coming in? What attitudes do they have? We can't expect that that's going to work the same way for every single person in your organization. That's my story. I'm going to stick to it. Would love to have some questions if you have them. Of course, I know a lot of people are always resistant or hesitant to put questions in a webinar like this. We talk to you all on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. Please feel free to email us as well if you can't think of a question now and one comes up. But Dana, I'll turn it back to you to see if there are any general questions.
That's right. And Reg, one of the questions is, someone was asking about kind of low cost, which, I know we focus on, options for conducting phishing testing. Can you talk just a little bit about what we do and how we kind of incorporate phishing testing for our customers?
Sure. So the basic function of phishing testing is to evaluate how well our awareness training and education program is working. So as all of you or most of you know, our training is delivered monthly. It's usually 2 to 4 minutes on a specific topic, and it's doing two things. It's giving and presenting skills to the attendee, but it's also elevating awareness. For those 4 minutes, that individual is focused on cybersecurity. If we can do that continuously, repetitively, it tends to, over time, elevate their awareness, which is their motivation to take the 2 seconds to apply their skills. So we have a very low cost option for phishing testing. If you're not already engaging us for this, and 95% of our customers do, but if you're not, we'd love to talk to you about how this works, because on a monthly basis, we send out a simulated phish. And essentially, our platform is smart enough to take actual phishing emails that exist in the wild that month. So we don't have people, hand crafting phishing testing that might not be relevant to your organization. It's very driven by what's happening in real life. So it tends to be relevant. It's seasonal. It's targeted to certain types of organizations. All of that goes into those phishing tests. So there's a lot of thinking that goes on behind that. But other types of phishing tests can be done yourself. If you wanted to do something that's low cost or almost no cost, drop a flash drive in the the cafeteria or a common area and see who plugs that in, because we don't want people doing that. So there are other ways to do this that are low and no cost. They would extend what we're doing from a phishing and testing standpoint. But I would argue that there are so many low cost or free options to developing a culture of security, including walking up to someone in front of their peers and saying, hey, listen, great job on your awareness training. Like, people may not realize it, but this is really important to us. And I really appreciate that you take it seriously and that you're overperforming. Thank you. I appreciate it. It was free. It took you 30 seconds to do that. And everyone who saw that or heard it or heard about it, guess what? Their motivation increases, because they want to be the next person to be recognized and identified as a performer and someone contributing to the solution, being a good security steward for the company. That's free. It costs nothing. One of many examples, but I think we can deliver the vast majority of the program. Some of it's automated, some of it's helping with communications. We've helped a lot of our customers develop games or posters or other email communications. We do that all the time. So we're available to help build most of that out for you, but it takes nothing for you to walk up to someone and say, nice job. Really awesome. I appreciate it.
Reg, thank you. And we had another question. Can you recommend a good resource for crafting incident response drills?
Or I'm sorry, what was that?
Recommend a good source for crafting incident response drills.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a customer of OrbitalFire, if you're a managed customer, you have access to all of our templates. If you want to try to build an incident response plan yourself, you feel like you've got that capability, ask us for the template. It's available to you for no charge. In fact, all of our templates are available to our customers at no charge. So please ask. Yeah. Now, for most of our customers, it's a little more involved. And so we are the authors of that document. And the way that works is we build an initial draft, which is probably 98% complete. We ask you to fill out some information so that we can create a final document. But the tabletop itself is, another element of that. So the plan template is available to all of you. The tabletopping is a little more involved, but certainly please contact us and we're happy to take you through the way that we conduct tabletops. And maybe it makes sense for us to help you with that, or maybe you're perfectly capable of doing it yourself. Either way, we'll talk through in detail how we do this, how we develop the scenarios, how we run the drill, and what the goals are and some of the outcomes. We'd love to talk about that. And maybe that's a good, that's probably a really good webinar topic for sometime next year. Talk about incident response tabletops and how they work, why they work, some critical elements. We would love to do that.
That's great. So that's all the questions we have. This has really been wonderful. And as Reg mentioned before, you do have other questions or are looking for additional resources, you can always reach us at support@orbitalfire.com. We are here for you, and we want to just be that small business cybersecurity resource.